here, especially on a beautiful Sunday morning like today. And thank you to join us in this dark room. And I'm Lili Vieira de Carvalho, the Executive Director of the Vancouver Latin American Cultural Center. Can you hear me well? Is this voice tone good enough? So we don't have to project much, which is good. So VLAC is an organization with the mandate of sharing a deeper understanding of Latin American arts. Our main goal is to acquire or to run a physical space for Latin American arts here in Vancouver. We are actually closer to that than ever through a possibility of us being at the Britannia Community Center that's being redeveloped. I invite you all to learn more about what we do. If you don't subscribe to our newsletter, that's a great way of learning a little bit more about what we do. So our website is VLAC, V-L-A-C-C, I think it's there, VLACC.ca. So if you go there, just subscribe to our newsletter. So lovely to have you all, and I'm so happy to be here welcoming Flávia, who just arrived from Brazil 2 days ago. And she won't even have time to recover from the jet lag because she's already leaving tomorrow. Oh. So we are so lucky to have her and to have the premiere of her movie Fogarel here at VIF, sponsored by VLAC, and also have her for this more intimate conversation with you. So it's my pleasure to introduce Tina House. She's a proud Métis from BC. And she began her television career in 1997 as a talent agent for film and TV. She is a public speaker, facilitates film and TV workshops, and she has shot, written, produced, and edited numerous documentaries and music videos. In 2003, she was associate producer for the feature film On the Corner, which has won numerous awards worldwide. She joined APTN National News in 2007 as a video journalist in the BC Bureau. In 2010, she was the recipient of the Amnesty International Human Rights Journalism Award for her story on murdered and missing women and girls. An amazing feat. She has been featured on numerous occasions as a panelist on CBC's Power and Politics, and her news coverage and her news coverage has also been showcased on CTV National News. In April of this year, Tina was bestowed the 2022 Canadian Screen Awards for Best National Report. Flávia Neves graduated in Cinema and Literature from the Fluminense Federal University, UF, and studied in screenwriting and Meisner technique at the Escuela Internacional de Cine y Televisión in Cuba. At 16, she directed her first short film, A Liberdade, in 1998, screened at Festival International of Environmental Film, the Festival Internacional de Cinema Ambiental. In 2019, she directed and screened the series Amanagé, O Mensageiro do Futuro, aired by TV Cultura. Fogarel, currently screening at VIF. Actually, there is a screening now at 1 p.m., which is going to be the second and last screening of the movie, is her narrative feature debut. And good to also say that it won the third audience awards at the Biennale. Currently, Neves is developing her second feature film, Tempo do Poder, with the support of Ibermedia. So that's our guests. Wow. I will be here assisting Flávia with a little bit of translation whenever she needs, so over to you, Tina.
Well, thank you so much for having me today. It's lovely to meet all of you, and really nice to see your trailer for your film. I'm very proud of all of your work, and thank you so much for inviting us to join us today. As our host mentioned, I am Tina House. I live here in Vancouver, and I'm a video journalist for the Aboriginal People's Television Network. We're the fourth national broadcaster in Canada, And we're also affiliated with the WITBIN, which is the World Indigenous Television Broadcasters Network. So we actually have 13 partners that we showcase our work with around the world. So it's a huge honor for us. We also just launched in the U.S. called All Nations Network, and that just happened last week. So APTN is not government funded. We make our money with subscriptions from households. I think it's like 25 cents per household. So that gives us a lot of freedom. We are not muzzled by government funds, so to speak. So, you know, my colleagues and I mean, we just have the most incredible job. We get to meet and travel to the most amazing places. We get to talk to people that normally wouldn't have a voice, and we empower their stories and propel possible change with so many serious issues. Just in March of this year, I traveled with the delegation to Rome, Italy to see the Pope for the historic apology that was given to the residential school survivors. Since the 215 unmarked graves were discovered in Kamloops, I was on top of that story from then, and I haven't stopped. You know, I've been to the Cowessess First Nation in Saskatchewan, where they found an additional 751. I mean, it's such a, it's really almost like unbelievable that we're actually telling these stories. I mean, no other place in the world would you call a student that leaves one of those institutions a survivor. They're not a graduate. They're actually a survivor. And there is not any good residential schools that I've heard of. I have not heard of one good story from any of these places. And so a lot of my work is very difficult and challenging at times to tell these stories, but it's very important as well. Indigenous people have a rich, rich, rich diversity of culture, history, language, tradition. Just the way that we've thrived throughout, you know, colonization. I mean, there's so much to talk about here, you know, going back to, for instance, the Doctrine of Discovery, you know, when that was first initiated in 1453 by Pope Alexander. He wrote a papal bull stating that Indigenous people were not human. Because we were not human nor Christian, that meant that the colonizers had full gain to come over to Canada to actually take over our lands because they felt that they were not inhabited, but yet they were. That led to the biggest genocide in the world, and millions and millions of people were exterminated because of this. The papal bull that was written, the Doctrine of Discovery, is entwined in every single one of our legal policies still today in Canada. Indigenous people have an uphill battle when it comes to fighting for the rights in courts, fighting for the rights for their land, for fighting, for instance, for justice in the court system. I mean, the odds are stacked against Indigenous people, but yet we thrive. And there's so many successful, amazing, powerful people out there that are doing amazing things. So, you know, I really feel that turning these stories into films like my friend here and perhaps others in the crowd here, I think that it's our time to finally elevate those voices on an international level and don't stop. You know, the power from within, the power of the people. I mean, every Saturday now, since the, you know, the protests for the young lady from Iran, that's it, what was her first name now? The lady that...
Does anybody remember?
Yeah. So this young lady, the injustice that was done to her, I mean, just last Saturday I was actually driving from the North Shore back to Vancouver, and all the way down Georgia Street through Stanley Park, along the whole causeway, all the way to Granville Street, there were literally thousands and thousands of people waving the flags, demanding justice for this young lady. And I actually drove through the flags because I was actually on that side of the road. The feeling that I got from, like, you know, what was happening, I mean, these are world issues that we're talking about, but it relates to so many of us. So I really feel incredibly honored to be here today to share a bit of my story, and I'd like to pass it over to my colleague here.
Before you go, Flávia, I just, an oversight, I would like to acknowledge that we are in the unceded and stolen lands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh peoples, and that we are so grateful to be in these beautiful lands, and that they were taking care of these lands for us, as they do to this day. And so tomorrow's Thanksgiving, And I think that we have so much to be thankful to the original nations of BC and all the Coast Salish peoples, because we are benefiting from what they did for centuries.
Perfect. I will speak in Portuguese, sorry. Sou Flávia Neves, sou de Goiás, Brasil. Goiás também tem esse nome por ter sido... é um nome de uma etnia indígena que foi extinta.
So Flávia is from Goiás, Brazil. That's in the middle of Brazil, near Brasília. And she was saying that the name of this province in Brazil, Goiás, is the name of the nation that was extinct.
Atualmente a gente está vivendo um momento muito difícil no Brasil, que, bom, todo mundo está acompanhando, mas eu gostaria de falar principalmente que o que está em jogo são os interesses do agronegócio, né? Atualmente, principalmente, temos um governo para cuidar dos interesses do agronegócio em detrimento de todo o mundo e a população brasileira.
Yeah, so Brazil is going through a really difficult patch right now, as you're probably following on the news. And that this region, Goiás, is really run by agribusiness and in a way that's destructive and not good.
O principal interesse que está em jogo é do agronegócio e, atualmente, com a possibilidade de um novo governo, eu acredito que os povos indígenas são os primeiros. É um governo principalmente para dizimar os povos indígenas que restam no Brasil. É o principal objetivo desse governo.
Yeah, that pretty much the main reason, like the main reason of being of this government is to decimate indigenous peoples and work for agribusiness.
Porque atualmente as únicas terras que ainda restam para a exploração da pecuária e do agronegócio são as terras indígenas.
Yeah, because the lands that are still up for grabs, let's say for agribusiness and for cattle, are indigenous lands.
Todo o esforço para liberar as armas são para matar os povos indígenas.
Yeah, there has been this gun reform, making guns more available, and they are mainly so agribusiness related people can kill indigenous people.
Atualmente tem uma situação muito complexa, né, na Amazônia. Eu vou para lá daqui 2 semanas e é real que entre turnos, provavelmente agora tem um esforço de avançar o máximo possível antes de ter um resultado desfavorável a eles.
Yeah. So because we had the first round of election, and we'll have the second one on October 30th. And so that all these problems are accelerating right now because they want to get the most damage done before, losing power.
O que acho que o grande problema no Brasil sempre foi a economia de exploração e que com isso sempre destruindo os biomas de um país que tem a principal biodiversidade do mundo.
There is a exploitation of the environmental resources, of the natural resources in Brazil, and that has always been the case.
E eu acho que a gente está chegando na reta final de destruir os últimos biomas que restam. E sobre a maior biodiversidade do mundo e a maior riqueza do mundo que está em jogo por conta de exportações que beneficia somente uma classe em detrimento de todo o planeta.
Yeah, so I'm risking losing this whole the biome, the biodiversity that's so rich in Brazil, and that in many cases is you can have it anymore, just to favor business.
E o maior problema, eu acho, do Brasil, dos brasileiros é que realmente foi cortada essa relação com essa origem completamente. Não existe uma consciência de identidade, não existe uma identidade que incorpore milênios de sabedoria em detrimento de 500 anos de conhecimento ocidental.
Ficou confuso? Não, você falou perfeito. Eu que estou tendo dificuldade de traduzir. Say that again.
Bom,
Agora
Knowledge has been privileged over millennia of indigenous knowledge.
And that there was this cut, is what she said.
Sorry to.
No, thank you. It's so helpful. Thank you. Don't ever do this. To do this too. But there was this cut between, that there is no connection between the current Brazilian civilization, let's say, and the peoples that were there for millennia. And if not having that connection, you lose identity by not connecting. And with that, you also lose all this millennia of knowledge that didn't pass on because there was this abrupt cut.
E eu acho que tudo que está acontecendo hoje, além, lógico, da falta de educação, que somos um dos países que tem os piores índices educacionais do mundo.
Yeah, so what's happening today, besides the fact that we have the lowest educational levels in the world.
Mas também não adianta ter uma escola que só fala da cultura europeia.
Yeah, that's also no point in just having schools that just talk about the European experience.
Acho que realmente estamos a caminho de um suicídio, né, coletivo no Brasil, e isso é muito grave, mas principalmente por a gente não ter nenhuma conexão com esses povos que são muito presentes no Brasil ainda, com a sua sabedoria e cultura, protegendo o que resta dos biomas do Brasil. E uma vez que a gente tem 50 milhões de pessoas escolhendo o próprio suicídio, eu só posso explicar isso a partir de uma total desconexão com o que a gente realmente é.
That there is this enormous disconnection between the original people's experience and what happens now, and that's pretty much it's like suicide, and that 50 million Brazilians are actually choosing that path right now.
Atualmente, os Yanomamis, que são a etnia, uma das maiores etnias do Brasil, estão sofrendo com invasão do seu território, apoiado e chancelado pelo presidente. Situações como a gente estudou um pouco na escola, abuso das mulheres, das crianças, isso voltou a acontecer de forma completamente divulgada e pública e publicizada, e a população me parece ter o desejo de extermínio dessas populações, e isso é uma coisa que realmente...
That Yanomami nation, which is one of the largest in Brazil, that always had so many problems, now it's being very public that their lands are being invaded with the support of the government, and stories of abuse of children and women that we know that has happened for many years, now happening again, and it's very public.
Eu acho que nós queremos ser o o que nunca vão ser americanos, europeus, e não somos reconhecidos por eles, jamais, porque seríamos uma cópia mal feita deles, e perdemos a oportunidade de ser quem a gente deveria ser quando a gente conhece uma etnia como no Xingu. A sensação é sempre o que a gente poderia ter sido algo muito mais incrível.
Yeah, that Brazilians always have this wish of being Americans or of being European, and that's something that is not ever going to pan out. It's always going to be kind of like a bad copy, and that we are missing the opportunity of actually incorporating the experiences of these people. Just saying, Xingu, you mentioned this nation and this area. That when we visit, you see how much we're missing by not incorporating that, because it's so rich, and we are just wasting that.
Os povos indígenas no Brasil estão em expansão. Eles, na verdade, são os povos mais politizados, né, do Brasil. Quando o brasileiro fala que o brasileiro não... As pessoas falam e comentam, o brasileiro não sabe de política, não sabe votar. Estamos falando dos brasileiros não indígenas, porque os indígenas são altamente politizados e eles estão vivos porque são altamente politizados.
Yeah, that there is the indigenous nations in Brazil are actually in expansion right now, against all odds, and that's because they are highly politicized. Like they really have a notion of what's going on, and they speak their minds. And so when you say that Brazilians don't care about politics, it's that it might be true for Brazilians in general, but not for the indigenous peoples.
E eles têm a chave para o futuro. São os únicos que podem nos dizer como resolver o grande problema que temos hoje no mundo.
Yeah, and they hold the key to the future. They are the only ones who can tell us how to move forward.
É por isso que temos o prazer e a honra de poder ouvi-lo.
That's why we have the pleasure and the honor to have Tina today and be able to talk to
her. What can I say? I mean, there's so many issues around the world that we all have an opportunity to tell the story of. Everybody in this room has a cell phone. I mean, the quality of these cell phones these days, in fact, this little phone that I have, I've actually filmed news clips that I've been able to put on my own stories. It's that kind of broadcast quality, the audio, the lighting, everything. It's beautiful. But we all have a chance to, empower ourselves to really get out there and really to share these stories and to talk about the injustices. And I'm so incredibly honored, and I want to thank you for your courage to tell the stories from your country, because here in Canada, we don't hear a lot of what's happening over there. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your stories with us, because it's incredibly unique, but not so unique for Indigenous people to share somewhat of the same story around the world. Here in Canada, we have many issues that we also are fighting for. There's so many things that I can talk about, and I wish I had all day to talk with you guys about it, but we don't. But I just want to say that, filmmaking is really an incredible opportunity to share these stories in a big way. I know that when I first started filmmaking, to see it from the little screen, the little monitor on your video camera, and then to see it on your computer screen, and then to see it on a screen like this, there's no other feeling like it in the world. My thing is, I always love to sit in the front row and I get my popcorn and my pop, and then it's like, wow, it's incredible. It really is. And so that's the reason why, hearing from filmmakers like my friend here and others, this is a real opportunity to make positive change. How many people in the crowd here are filmmakers themselves? Just about everybody. That's incredible. Wow, it's nice to meet you all. How many people here want to get into filmmaking? Anybody is interested here? Yeah? Okay. to have an opportunity like this and to have a celebration of the Latin culture all this month, what an opportunity to tell these stories.
Yeah,
Can you
I
tell us a little
was telling Tina that at BLAC we are planning for next year a series that we are calling a Reconciliation for Latin Americans. And that would be a way, maybe this is like the very seed of it, of having moments where we can discuss the points of, thank you so much, the points of contact between our Latin American experience of colonization and of loss of our nations and how that's developing in similar ways in many times. Mostly, as we know, through greed and through trying to just, milk everything in a way that is just damaging the world so badly. But there are so many cultural experiences that we share as well. And so the series will be just kind of this space for us to explore in many different ways. So it can be, through film or through music or through, just open conversations. And so we are open to your input for that series as well. Which brings me to also say that let's keep this conversation open right now, because instead of having a Q&A at the end, if you want to jump in at any moment, I can be paying attention to your hands and bring in the questions.
I have a question. Hi, my name is Jessica. Eu sou americana, mas não pai brasileiro, but I will try to speak in English in like half and half.
You can go English if you can,
Yes.
because Flávia understands really well. It's
Perfect.
just that,
So, and Tina, correct me if I mess this up. But so I'm a settler here on First Nations territory, and I teach like in a public school. And there are many points of interaction that settler communities can have with First Nations here. Like if we search for it, we can be part of community, like however that may be. And in the public schools, we have points of contact, and students are learning about First Nations community. How is that in Goiás? Like, how is that in the system, the education system in Brazil? Is that the same, or it seems so polarized? Like First Peoples and modern Brazilians. Like, are there points of contact to learn about these cultures in a neutral space? Neutral. Do you know what I'm saying? Like in a space that's not so. I want what you have, instead of I'm learning about each other. Are there opportunities for that? I guess, I don't know.
ela está dizendo que aqui você chama professora, então vocês têm uma atividade, eles estão tendo uma oportunidade de conversar sobre isso. Se você tem isso acontecendo no sistema educacional no Brasil, ou você tem qualquer outro momento em que tem uma possibilidade de diálogo sobre as experiências indígenas.
Em Goiânia, que é a cidade onde eu nasci, tem cursos universitários que chamam interculturais para os indígenas. Na grade curricular já está previsto.
So it's like a university course. So she's saying that in Goiânia, they actually do have university courses that are called intercultural courses that are for indigenous people.
Mas na educação fundamental...
Então isso eu ia concluir. Esses professores estão sendo formados para dar conta do que está previsto já no Plano Nacional de Educação, que é a introdução da história da cultura indígena nas escolas. Mas, ao mesmo tempo, em Goiás, o número de escolas militares dominaram as escolas públicas atualmente.
And so that these courses are preparing teachers to teach in the fundamental and intermediate levels to comply with a plan, an educational plan of having the indigenous stories being told in the school system. But at the same time that's happening, that there is like forming teachers for that, she was saying that in Goiânia, the growth of military schools is just mind-blowing, and that is kind of overcoming any effort.
A escola que eu estudei, uma escola pública, estadual, ela já parecia uma cadeia quando eu estudava, e agora ela é uma escola militar e cresceu consideravelmente a ocupação, a transformação das escolas militares. E atualmente o momento também, o que vinha forte, que era essa ocupação desses espaços, não só indígena, como também a cultura afro-brasileira, enfim, toda a nossa própria história, que foi excluída das escolas desde o começo. Quando isso começou a se organizar de forma para acontecer, a gente teve o governo Bolsonaro que tomou o poder e, enfim.
So her own school, the school she went to, which is a public provincial school, so it used to look like a jail, right? But it's becoming, now it's more and more becoming like military sort of schools. And and that any effort, because the efforts to tell the stories of the indigenous peoples, there is also the whole Afro-Brazilian history that's not told in schools. And so there was a beginning of saying, let's start to tell these stories, but then the current government came, and any effort that was underway was kind of stopped and dropped.
Isso, Goiás, né? Estou falando que é o que eu acompanhei mais de perto. Mas no Rio, onde eu moro, não tem nenhum esforço que eu conheça nesse sentido. E eu trabalhei na rede pública de educação e realmente ainda se faz o dia do índio.
Yeah, saying that the Goiás is still, because the indigenous peoples are more prominent and part of everyday life in the middle, in this, the center of Brazil, let's say. But she lives in Rio now, and she doesn't see the same kind of interest as you see in these more remote areas. And so it might not happen.
Eu queria só complementar com uma coisa. Nós temos a maior riqueza do mundo, né? O Brasil, que é a maior biodiversidade do planeta, de onde tudo pode ser inventado a partir da floresta. E a gente vai de novo perder essa oportunidade.
Yeah, the Brazil is so rich, maybe the richest in the world in terms of biodiversity. There is so much that can be generated through the resources of the forest, but we might just miss that opportunity altogether.
No discurso do Lula, que foi a coisa que realmente a novidade para mim, porque não só a gente teve uma aceleração nos últimos anos, mas qualquer outro governo que esteve presente no Brasil nunca enxergou a biodiversidade como uma fonte de riquezas. No discurso que eu ouvi dele, ele quer, porque ele também colaborou muito para ampliação e desenvolvimento, né, o pensamento desenvolvimentista do agronegócio. Então, podemos acreditar que talvez, se ele passar, vamos ter uma política menos agressiva, mas eu não quero.
Yeah, so saying that there is the potential of us having Lula back, and that would bring a little bit of hope. But actually, during the years that he was in power, he was also very much pro development, as they say, through actually just explore things and just use it up, instead of exploring the possibilities that the biodiversity, even like the commercial possibilities of the biodiversity in a sustainable way. And so we have a little bit of hope, but if we look back to what was done during his previous government, but it wasn't all that good either.
A gente tem os maiores casos de biopirataria, né? Porque temos as maiores, enfim, a maior concentração de biodiversidade, empresas francesas com discursos de orgânico, biológico, em respeito à natureza, são as principais biopiratas de espécies brasileiras. Ou seja, a França ganha muito dinheiro com a nossa biodiversidade.
And so there are other countries getting the benefit of the biodiversity, like she's mentioning France, that it's actually piracy because you just copy
A andiroba foi patenteada por outros países, por exemplo.
Yeah, so other countries got the patent for some of our resources, our natural resources, and so other countries are making money out of our biodiversity, while Brazil could be.
Se a gente pensar que a indústria cosmética é uma das maiores e a única que não tem crise.
Yeah, and this specifically the cosmetics industry said that's one that never goes through crisis, and they are making money out of our resources.
Esse poderia ser uma forma de monetizar, mas eu acredito que existem outras formas também. Teve a experiência do Equador, que foi curta, mas que para eles foi um presidente indígena, inclusive, foi um grupo indígena que propôs para o mundo que eles recebessem recursos para eles não precisarem destruir a floresta. Que eles tivessem uma mobilização mundial, que eles recebessem recursos porque a floresta é um interesse mundial.
But there was a short-lived experience, a successful experience with Ecuador, that an indigenous group kind of pledged for international money to keep the forest alive. And so there are ways that Brazil could be making this work, and it's just not. I would like to remember, because it's kind of the silver lining. We are just so doomed, and it feels so sad what's going on. But I have been here 15 years, and when I read the news from Brazil now, I think that there is more understanding of the value of knowing more about our roots and about our indigenous peoples than ever before. I really see that happening because I think there is more curiosity now. There are voices from the indigenous peoples coming out. We just had to I don't know what the parallel would be here, but the lower house in Brazil just voted in 2 indigenous women, which is unheard of. And so we are starting to see these leaderships coming out and having support. And I think it was the most diverse election ever, because indigenous peoples, but also black people, trans, all a lot more diversity than we are used to. And that includes the indigenous people. And so that I was seeing, like, people having their feather paraphernalia on their election materials. It's just so beautiful to see. And they are actually made it. And so we have, it's a small step, but I think that there is a little bit more interest right now.
I have a question. I would like to know how the communities receive your movies after they're out. Like, what's the biggest reaction you get from them?
So I will try to answer this just quickly, because we had that question on the Q&A of Gael. Flavia's movie is not out in Brazil yet.
Oh, true.
And we're talking about indigenous peoples, which is a small part, one little parallel plot in the plot line in the movie, but there is a lot of other hot button issues throughout the movie. So, and the movie is coming out in a week.
Yes.
So
13.
yeah, so it's really kind of holding, like bracing for that, because it's the movie is coming out in a moment where conversations in Brazil about politics and all those subjects are very heated, moving towards the election on the 30th, and so her movie has the potential of really being included in the conversation. So she's kind of hoping for what can happen with that.
Eu fiz também uma série com 3 episódios para TV Cultura. Em cada episódio a gente propunha para uma etnia do Centro-Oeste para fazer um curta-metragem, um filme carta para gerações futuras, chama Amanagé, o Mensageiro do Futuro. Então é um formato de reality que a gente acompanha em 5 dias, eles têm 5 dias, um dia para roteiro, 2 dias para filmagem, 2 dias para montagem.
Trying to catch up. So one work that she did before for Gariel was the series for TV Cultura in Brazil. It was 13 episodes done with indigenous groups from the Goiás area. And so they would propose to each one of these communities to do their own documentary that would be like a letter for future generations and how they would translate that. And so they would have to do, the format was almost like a reality show, but they would have 5 days to do it, like 1 day to develop the screenplay, 2 days to shoot, I imagine, and then 2 for like post-production.
Yes.
Yeah, and so the series is called Amanagé. And is it available online? Is that something that people
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay. Yes. And so she got to work and meet with these 13 different nations from that central area.
Então, uma coleção de 13 curtas-metragens e os seus processos de realização. Dessa série, a gente formou 5 etnias e as outras 7, 8 já eram cineastas indígenas, alguns muito reconhecidos internacionalmente. E a gente teve metade de indígenas mulheres e metade de indígenas homens. As mulheres, normalmente em suas etnias, não faziam cinema, a maioria. E, na verdade, foram elas que depois ganharam uma projeção nacional e foram incorporadas pelas principais TVs
Yeah, so it was a very rich experience because out of this episodes, some people working with her, they were already documentary filmmakers in general, with some experience in film. But with 5 of the groups, right, they didn't have any experience, so they kind of had to form them, like help them out to tell their stories. And the whole group was kind of half men, half women, half male, half female. But that, and mostly women didn't have a previous experience with movie in this group. But they were the ones going forward to, national acclaim and to getting jobs telling their stories, and even international being
Na Globo.
Yeah, and like Globe, which is the main TV channel in Brazil. Yes. Yeah, so that's very that must be very, very satisfying to you, right?
Yes, porque eles fazem cinema para a própria população, como resgate de rituais, como uma forma de guardar, como memória mesmo, como registro para as gerações futuras terem acesso àqueles rituais, àqueles cantos, mas eu também entendi que tinha um desejo de fazer parte do mercado também.
That mostly when she talks about these groups and the filmmakers within this project, that they were mainly filmmakers filming for their own community in a way to register stories or
Musician.
yeah, in ceremonies and the ways of doing things, and kind of in a way to preserve that as storytelling for future generations. But that there was, like this was the kind of filmmaking that they could do, but that there was a real interest in making part of the general film market.
Eles, na verdade, no Centro-Oeste, os maiores cineastas que trabalham há mais tempo com melhor nível de cinema são os indígenas.
Yeah, in that specific area in Brazil, the best filmmakers that come from Goiás and from that central region are indigenous.
Okay.
For myself, I mean, obviously I do the national news daily. My deadline is very tight, so I start work maybe 8:30, 9 o'clock, and I've got to feed my story to my head office in Winnipeg by 2:45 p.m. So that's a full, complete story that's shot, written, voiced over, edited, B-roll, everything all added, so it's very, very quick. And usually I'm top story, so I have to have it in by 2:45 every day. But I love it. I love the deadline. I love the rush. I mean, I love the opportunity to, again, tell stories that normally people don't ever get to hear. And so we have around, I think, 5.4 million viewers daily. My contribution is with CTV National News. That number went up to 35 million people watching my stuff. So
everybody.
yeah, exactly, everybody. So, I get a lot of comments of, geez, I didn't know, or, thank you for opening my eyes. Because, like many of our indigenous nations around the world, the true history was left out of the school books. Big chunks were redacted, and you don't know what happened. So many people are waking up to the fact that residential schools was a horrible atrocity that happened in this country, and like many other nations around the world, it was a part of a plan for genocide. So, just recently on September the 30th, we had Orange Shirt Day, and I was so incredibly proud to drive around this city and see so many people wearing orange shirts to pay tribute to those residential school survivors. And for those that don't know what Orange Shirt Day is, it goes back to a residential school survivor by the name of Phyllis Webstad. She was a residential school survivor who was attending residential school near Williams Lake, BC. Her first day of school, her grandmother took her to town and bought her this beautiful orange shirt that she decided she was going to wear for her first day of school. Well, she wore that beautiful shiny orange shirt to school, and as soon as she got there, she was immediately made to change, and she never saw that shirt ever again, and basically given a uniform and a number, like a concentration camp. So the orange shirt movement is now growing, and it's just an incredible feeling. Like when we talk about reconciliation, we like to say, instead of reconciliation, let's do reconciliation. And what that means is everybody has an opportunity to make the world a better place. If it's simply maybe making an extra at your dinner table that night and offering it to somebody who's not so fortunate, who's on the street. If it's simply giving out a bottle of water or just a quick hello in the morning to somebody who's having a hard time, I think that we can all, each and every one of us, has an opportunity to make positive change in this world. So, is there any questions from any filmmakers? I'm really interested in hearing from the filmmakers in our audience today. Can I start with you? What type of stuff do you do?
Oh, what do I do?
Yes.
Documentaries. I'm a newbie. I've been in academia, in the nursing discipline, which is very aligned. It's here in Canada, in Colonization territory in Victoria, for 18 years. So what I was going to say is that the nursing discipline is very aligned with schooling all over the world. It has served as an apparatus alongside the government, alongside the religious institutions here in Canada, as a whitening apparatus in many instances. So I went into documentary film to kind of free myself as well from that structure and to be able to even speak about growing up in Brazil. Flavia's movie, if I may, was so impactful, Flavia. There are so many intersections there, rich intersections to be dissected. How right-wing politicians, that idea of family values, and there's so much there. So enough of me. Just this is a little bit of a taste of how the arts can be liberating, and you both touched me deeply with your sharing this morning. That's the power of telling stories, and it took hold as women, and strong women, from your positionalities. I'm just, thank you for the opportunity even to vent that. This is all here, that's living here for so long. This is such an individualistic place of mentality, those Western ideas of this is a community, and having those conversations is so rich and so inspiring, and ignites fire, and fires that are already there. So, muito obrigada.
Obrigada a você.
So I went to documentary school. When I finished a PhD in nursing, I left nursing altogether because the focus of my dissertation was on racism in the white nursing academia. And I did a film with my daughter for school, for the American introduction, experience of growing up between cultures. And it has lots of these elements of growing up here, what it meant. She said that, they said that at grade 9 in school here, a friend of hers said, aren't you a Brazilian? Aren't Brazilians supposed to be hot? And that meant for them at that time. And other elements as well, so that was a little bit. And with that, I was just so touched by the film, as you said, to have the whole process and to see it, the opening, my graduation film went to the Vancouver Queer Film Festival, the Latin American Film Festival here 3 years ago. I'm newbie in documentary films, so but that to see it was on commercial at the York Theatre, to see that and to have Victoria, is my daughter's name, they are also in the arts. It was just magical. I actually went back to Brazil to document my mom, for me, not for making films, but to tell the story, to hear from my mom the stories that my mom is 83, and then the pandemic happens, and I ended up 8 months there after 20 years. That's a little bit of wow. Let's have coffee, everybody.
I come back. And I would like to point out, I have Christian here. Christian here is working with Black on a project that is 5 documentaries about Latin Americans in Canada. So it's 10-minute documentaries. Each one follows one prominent Latin American in the arts here in 5 disciplines. And so we're talking about Sal Ferreira, for instance. He's going to be the one representing music in Latin America, but the idea is to show the trajectory, like the journey of immigration, how that happened, and how they went to from coming to Canada to be where they are. we would like to show other Latin Americans arriving now that's possible. I think that is even more possible now in a way. And so we are going to tell those stories, those 5 stories on a project that's called Relocation, and that Christian is directing.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a great opportunity. I always loved the Vancouver Latin American Cultural Center. When I got here, when I arrived, it was the first place that I went to look for art and connection. So I've been here 10 years now in Canada. And I have a film company, so that's one of the projects I'm working in. Then I'm also working on a script of an Indigenous lady who's a friend of mine, which is 65, and she was part of the school system. And it's a kind of a drama thriller that it's a fiction. It's about this little girl looking for her brother. And so we go through the scope of understanding if maybe the brother was killed or not. And this is all based on documents that she has been following the brother for 40 years. And yeah, it's a very heartfelt story. That's a feature film fiction that we just agreed on a book release. And then the Relocate project, the documentary Relocate project, will be ready in December 8th. And then we'll have screenings the first quarter of next year. Yeah. So we'll show
so this is
this
coming up.
documentary.
Yeah. And I used to say that Black has created these opportunities for us to be Latin Americans because we have more chance to be Latin Americans in Canada for this weird thing. Because like in our home countries, we wouldn't be as exposed to each other as we are here. And so we have these spaces that we are creating when we can have conversations like this one, in conversations where we can share our stories, compare and contrast, and see. And it has been amazing to see in our events. You know, we have like one of our series is a Latin American reading group of short stories. So it looks like a book club, but with short stories in translation from Latin America. And so everybody is welcome, and it's a way to not only Latin Americans, right, because it's in translation. But it's beautiful to see that whenever we are in this group talking about the stories, that how, you know, reading Garcia Marquez or Machado de Assis, how that hits us in similar ways, but in that we have these connections that sometimes we're not even aware of. But our shared experience in colonization, many times dictatorship, and those struggles are so it's sort of a common experience. Many times we are apart because we are far from each other geographically. Of course, in the case of Brazil, because of the kind of continental size of Brazil, we are also apart because of the difference in language, and then there's the Andes kind of separating us from the big forest kind. And so because we are here together, we have a chance to have conversations that many times we don't have in our original countries. And that's a big reason for us to believe in the future of our organization, because we won't run out of stories. We won't run out of and the talent that's coming from Latin America every day to Canada, it's something to worth of creating spaces for and to highlight. And so that's what we have been trying to do. So any further questions? I don't know, I lost track of time.
11:40.
And we still have some time. So if you have any like the time actually is kind of commanded by you and by Flavia's screening later on. But and we are talking about each of you experience. Don't you want to talk about what you have been doing?
Yes. Well, my name is André Luiz Machado. I'm a composer of music for films and games. I just came to Canada. It's been kind of 2 years, and one of the reasons that I came here to Canada because kind of some sort of way I was feeling so much oppressed by all the things that happen in Brazil, And it's hard to tell stories in Brazil. And just like it's for films, and many times independent films, that we're able to tell this story that all these agribusiness people, for example, they want to be untold, told, because they don't want to be this story to be seen, right? And nowadays they are kind of saying that we need to tell, because they used to say that people like filmmakers, like us, for example, we want to divide the country because we want to show the problems, right? And that's the opposite. We need to show the problems that's happening, and it's sad. And when we come to Canada, for example, we just we just see from above what's happening in Brazil. It's terrible. And I just finished like a major feature film from Brazil now, from Lula Films. It's the major TV production company in Brazil. The name of the film is The Truths. And always like the commercial film, but okay, you're just kind of touching so many social aspects of the Brazil as well. And it just came out in June in Brazil, but now it's in Canal Brazil. I think it was premiered last week in Canal Brazil. And just kind of in the right moment as well, because we're just talking about some political issues that we need to talk about. And yes, and I have just 2 days ago a game that I wrote the music for was released on all major consoles. But it's from a Brazilian company. And the nice thing is, it's just going to the road, but we're talking about Brazilian culture as well. There's kind of states on the game that we're just talking about how to say, like the fauna and flora.
Flora.
Yes, fauna and flora. It's the same, yes. So we're talking about the fauna and flora from the Brazilian culture, which is, it's also interesting. It's not about this, but everything's part of. If you want to, I truly believe when I'm also a producer, and when I'm talking about films and talking about our own countries, I truly believe that we need to talk about that in some sort of universal way, so we can kind of touch people from different societies, for example. I'm from the same city. Which is nice, because in Brazil it's quite common to see people, filmmakers from São Paulo and Rio de Janeiro. And it's quite hard to get into the industry, not being from São Paulo or Rio. So it's very nice to see Flávia, who needed to go to Rio de Janeiro nowadays. And just like José Eduardo Belmonte, and also Rio de Janeiro, is coming from Goiás as well. Myself coming from Goiás. And it's nice to see people not from São Paulo and Rio as well, touching bases with the main industry. That's nice.
Eu queria falar uma coisa que eu acho que é importante também. Eu sou de uma classe social que nunca fiz cinema, né? De fato, só estou aqui hoje porque houve um esforço, políticas públicas, para não só porque o fato de ser mulher, de Goiás, e, enfim, competindo no Rio, isso sempre foi uma coisa quase que nunca aconteceu. Então, acho que é importante dizer que a experiência do fogaréu é muito inédita no Brasil, porque normalmente, e aí a Lucrécia Martel fala que a pobreza da América Latina é porque quem faz cinema é só uma classe, e hoje temos circulando no mundo 3 filmes, os 3 filmes brasileiros que estão circulando internacionalmente são de pessoas que vieram das classes mais desprivilegiadas do Brasil.
Just saying that's just from a class in Brazil that usually doesn't make films. It usually, you have to come from a family with means to be able to do it. And so that is added to the fact that it was always true that if you are a woman and from Goiás stage. You know, it's harder to do it, but if you have the means, if you are going to good schools and you have support, you would still do it. But she said that it's really heartwarming to see that the three main movies that are traveling around to festivals in Brazil now, they are by women filmmakers. No, by okay, she's the only woman of the three. But the people who came from not being in a comfortable position to do movies, and so it's nice to see that there are some government actions that help that, of course, before this government. And the project of Fogarel started in 2014.
Sim, do governo anterior, né? Não do atual.
And I think that we saw, like, in the recent history of Brazil, since the end of dictatorship, we had this kind of stop-start with filmmaking quite a bit. Like, okay, you have this few years that you have some money for it, and then they cut the money, and then you don't have anything. And so that there was, like, we talk about the cinema da retomada, because there was like a moment where after not having any support from movies at all, there was a little bit of money again, and then it just takes a little bit of money. I always say that a small arts organization here made of Latin America has so much potential to go forward, because we have so much experience of using very little money to do a lot. And so we are good at that. Like, this is the training that we bring to Canada in the fact that we can plan here, because we could never plan there. You are always like on the verge of having a project killed by a government action and not see the light of the day. And so having our organization is very small, and it's on its 10th year now. We don't even get to celebrate very much, because we think, oh, you have been 10 years and you still don't have the cultural center, but because we have the luxury of planning, say we're going to take our time. You know, once it's here, it's a legacy project, something to stay, and we can take time. Let's start with a few volunteers, do a lot of planning, do all the check out if there is feasibility, if it's feasible, if there is demand, and we went like that with small research projects each year. And now in the past 3 years, we are really growing quite a bit. But this is like now we are benefiting from this time of planning, from this groundwork that we did slowly with the means that we could with volunteer work along the way. And now we have been able to produce more, to bring more events, to do more things. And hopefully in the coming years getting our space, which is like being Vancouver, the city that it is, we are asking for something that's very hard to get. We know that spaces in Vancouver are super expensive, and so it's kind of an uphill battle. But we are gathering more support, and with that we can support new Latin American artists, and old as well, like Christian knows, because we are doing this project with very established Latin American artists, which is a way to say to anybody arriving, like that, and say, here's the trajectory of Puerto Rican multi-instrumentalist Sal Ferreiras and what he did with since he immigrated, and hopefully this will be a way for you to reflect on that and think, I can have my space too.
And I think in the bigger sense of the world, the industry, I mean, Hollywood is finally waking up to telling our stories. I mean, who here has watched the movie Prey? Has anybody seen that on Disney?
On Disney Plus.
It's an incredible film starring all Indigenous people. Many of them are my friends. I mean, when I watched that film, I was so incredibly proud that they're finally getting it right. They're finally incorporating Indigenous people as producers, as directors, as writers, as actors. I mean, it's just an incredible opportunity right now. I think that now there's a surge for telling our stories in a bigger way. I know that at the Aboriginal People's Television Network, where I work, we are incredibly invested into empowering our filmmakers. So, providing broadcast licenses and sharing within our networks is something that we can do to promote Indigenous filmmaking in the world. And, now is really, I see as a groundswell of support from industry to make big things happen. So being here at the Vancouver International Film Festival, what an honor, what a showcase, and congratulations, Flavia. I'm so very proud of you and your film. Thank you for coming to Canada.
If we still have any questions, I will still take a question. Otherwise, I think that I'm just going to thank Flávia and Tina so much for being here. This has been a treat. I'm sorry that we didn't have more people for this, but this is how we start, right? And I'm so glad to have this engaged group here this morning. Thank you for your questions. Thank you for participating. And I hope to see you in our future programs. We have the Latin Expression series starting right now. This is only the second event in a series of 8. So go to our website. We'll have literature events coming up with Writers Fest. We are going to have a reading group with a visiting Ecuadorian writer. It's one of the events coming up. A big round table about Latin American dance in the city with 4 panelists. And like I didn't know first that. Did you know that there was a puto scene in Mexico? I didn't know that. So we're gonna have a Mexican puto dancer with Salvador, big name. Yeah, and so creating spaces for these conversations and all that culminating in we have the Museum of Anthropology with the Chicanx exhibition, which is an amazing exhibition. Whoever hasn't been definitely should go with Chicano artists, and so we are going to have a conversation there with artists, but also taking them to share and to talk with local visual artists from Latin America, culminating with the Salva Herrera's concert on November 4th and 5th. I really recommend that everybody goes. It's not an expensive show, very accessible. 10-piece band on stage with dancers, and it's going to be quite something. So I hope to see you in one of those and any of our future events. Thank you, Tina, so much for being here. Flávia.
Thank you.
Obrigada.